Welcome to everyone this morning. We have a special treat for us. We have a brother visiting from the Quincy congregation, Brooklyn Bethel, Brother Waters. He's going to deliver the talk, Communication Within the Family. So let's give our attention to Brother Waters.
Not too long ago, they took a survey of 550 professionals who specialize in helping families. And when they were asked to list which trait they most commonly found in strong families, right at the top of the list was communication. But the sad fact is communication is what is lacking in many marriages and many families, not simply in the world. We hear about the world's marital crisis, 1 in 2 marriages ending in divorce, but even among true Christians, we see a crisis. We see these pressures beginning to affect families of Jehovah's people. If I may speak on a personal basis, just in the last couple of months, I've personally witnessed the stuff of 3 married couples that were friends of ours. Years of full-time service, the husband's elders. So these are real problems that we're facing. What is this elusive thing, communication? How can we make it work in our families, with our marriages? If we're single people, how can we cultivate this so that we can handle a relationship? Well, in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, the Bible doesn't so much give a definition of communication as it does give a description of it. There in chapter 14, Paul is discussing the gifts of the Spirit. And then he says in verse 9, after explaining about the trumpet sounding an indistinct call, he says, in the same way also, just as you can't respond to an indistinct trumpet call in the same way, unless you through the tongue utter speech easily understood. What a beautiful definition of communication. It doesn't involve making noise or talking. The emphasis is on whether you are understood. If the message doesn't get across, you may have talked and talked and talked, but you didn't communicate. And he says, if you're not understood, it says, how will it be known what is being spoken? You will, in fact, be speaking into the air. Now, how many families, how many marriages do we have where people are talking? There's noise being made, perhaps even yelling and screaming, but precious little understanding, communication. That's why communication is defined as transmitting thoughts, ideas, and feelings from one mind to another. And viewed from that perspective, communication can be seen to be an art, a challenge. One writer said that the greatest enemy of communication is the illusion of it, imagining that you have it when it's really not there. Well, why do so many have poor communication skills? What can we do to fix it or to improve? We're going to share some information from a publication that's well over 20 years old now, Making Your Family Life Happy, but a lot has happened since that book has come out. We've got another book, The Secret of Family Happiness, and countless articles in the Watchtower and the Wake. So we're going to try to work in some of this information. A lot has happened in the world, the rise of single-parent households, the rise of step-families, the increase of women in the workforce, increased understanding of the effects of being born into a dysfunctional family. So these are all factors we're going to try to weave in, and we hope we'll have something for everybody in this talk. Let's talk as a starting point of the relationship between parents and children. Now, Jehovah's people have a real advantage here because we understand what Paul meant at 2 Timothy 3:15, where he speaks of teaching from infancy. So most of God's people understand that from the moment a baby is born, it's time to start communicating, reading the Bible to him, bonding. As a child relates to its mother, it's learning one of the most valuable lessons in life, and that's the ability to trust. That's one of the foundations of communication, the ability to trust. Psalm 22 verse 9 says, you were the one making me trust while upon the breasts of my mother. But a problem can develop as children get older. Toddlers are needy. Children are needy. And this can trigger all kinds of feelings in parents. In some families, the child's neediness triggers an outburst of anger and verbal abuse. There is screaming, there's name-calling. Awake magazine calls this the systematic destruction of a child's self-esteem. Well, the Bible put it in Proverbs 12:18, when it compares abusive speech to the stabs of the sword. Well, how can we respond to a child's neediness and keep communication going. It's a challenge. Well, one reason why it's so difficult is some of us didn't get proper parenting, and we may enter adulthood or parenthood with impaired communication skills. And so we need to face this. Awake Magazine helped parents to understand that when a child makes us mad, we have to realize we're fooling ourselves. A child cannot make you mad. A child can provide the provocation, but you choose the response. You choose whether to get angry or not. And Awake said, and I quote, it said, much of parental abuse springs not from the youth's misbehavior, but from the parents' raging feelings of insecurity. Having never received adequate love and nurturing from their own mothers and fathers, some parents find it difficult to deal lovingly with their offspring. Do you see how a cycle gets set in motion that can go from generation to generation? Lack of communication, anger, wrath. Now the question is, how do we break that cycle and lay some good communication down? Here's a helpful Bible principle. Practical. James 1:19. It's a skill. This takes a lot of work, but it really lays a foundation for good communication. James 1:19 says this. It says, know this, my beloved brothers, every man must be swift about hearing, slow about speaking. Notice the last one, slow about wrath. Now there's a little program for us there, isn't it? In other words, get a hold of the feelings, get a hold of that anger, listen, and then in time, handle the situation. The child is needy. This may be a bad time for you. You may not be in the mood to deal with that neediness. But the scriptures say, no, listen, find out what's going on. Now sometimes, try as we may to control our emotions, we feel ourselves ready to lose it. Maybe this is something we've dealt with our whole lives. You feel it. You know you're going to lose it. Here's another piece of practical counsel. Proverbs 17:14. We're going to read this because we're going to refer to this more than once. Proverbs 17:14. Very practical counsel. It says, the beginning of contention is as one letting out waters. In other words, it's like a dam about to burst. Uh-oh, it's going to blow. I can see it. Uh-oh, get back. Now, if you see a dam about to burst, you stand there, go ahead, drown me. You wouldn't do that. What would you do? It says, before the quarrel bursts forth, take your leave. You might have to say, son, Daddy needs to walk around the block a couple of times. Or take deep breaths. Count to 100 or 1,000, whatever works for you. To get a hold of those emotions. And with practice, we begin breaking that cycle. We learn to do it, perhaps our parents never learned to do, to listen, to respond, to deal with our neediness. Now, will you always handle these Bible principles perfectly? No. You will lose it from time to time. The Bible guarantees it. It says, we all stumble many times. So if you say the wrong thing or fly off the handle, you don't have to imagine that you've damaged your child for life if you do something very simple. Apologize. Maybe there's something that's hard for us. Maybe our parents never apologized to us. We can break that cycle by sitting our child down and loving, Daddy shouldn't have said that. I'm so sorry. Can you find it in your heart to forgive me? And of course, children will forgive because they crave a good relationship with their parents. That can be such a healing thing to the family if we simply learn to apologize when we speak out of turn. Well, children don't stay little forever. A real crisis can strike when they become teenagers. One reason simply is puberty. Puberty is not an enemy. It may feel like it at times. It's hormonal changes. And like it or not, all children are going to go through this. Physical changes, emotional changes, new desires, new urges, new feelings. Now, from a kid's point of view, this has got its benefits. A young girl looks in the mirror and sees a womanly figure developing. That's a very exciting time of life. A young boy looks in the mirror and sees one or two little hairs and goes, oh, Dad, let me borrow the razor. So this feels like you're growing up, and it's great. But you know there's a dark side to this. When was the last time you adults thought about what it felt like to be 13? Are those the good old days? If you're like me, you try never to think about that. Because for most of us, going through puberty is a very embarrassing, very painful thing. Now imagine what it's like to a teenager to go through these physical changes and no one preparing you in advance for that. Well, to get our young ones through this period, we have to communicate, and that may mean talking about some things that you find rather embarrassing to talk about. Young girls need to know about the menstrual cycle. They need to know how their bodies work. They need to know that this is not a monthly curse. Their body is being prepared for future parenthood. It's a beautiful thing. So we need to talk about this. Young boys, they need to know how their bodies work. They need to know about nocturnal emissions, commonly called wet dreams. They need to know this is part of growing up. Nothing to be ashamed of. It's life. Their bodies are changing. They're being prepared for future fatherhood. Now, if we don't talk about these things, be assured that they're going to learn it somewhere else, and you may not like that source. You may learn it at school, off the streets. Now, and also, if we don't talk about it, we are communicating a very unhealthy message. We're saying that sex is too dirty to talk about, that our bodies are embarrassing and we shouldn't talk about them. And these can create feelings in our children that can even affect their future marriages. So we need to talk about these things. If you're uncomfortable with it, there's help. Articles have been published, for example, in February 22nd, 1992, Awake, we had some young people ask articles, what is happening to my body? And you can look up those articles, and if you're the shy type, at least go, read this. Read this. Do you have any questions? Well, goodness. But at least you've got the information in hand. Probably, though, there's going to be a lot of questions, and you may have to swallow some embarrassment and deal with it. You see, during puberty, young people tend to pull into their shell. They're changing. And they may feel, I'm going through something nobody else knows what I'm going through. And they can just cut you off. Close the door, turn up the sound, and there's Sony Walkmans, and that's it. Now, this way we bring them out of their shell. And as we talk, we begin to appreciate that their emotions change. One young girl says, and I quote, I find it very hard to live under my father's rules and restrictions. He set so many rules and restrictions, I feel like I'm in prison. Now, what's happening to her? Is she necessarily a bad kid? I don't think so. She's a teenager. She's growing up. She wants a little bit of freedom. And perhaps her parents are having difficulty letting go. There's another fact of life parents have to deal with. Letting go. The first man was told, a man will leave his father and his mother. It's part of the cycle of life. And it's important that we communicate to them that they can live on their own, that they can be independent. Now, what would that mean in a practical way? In a practical way, it means letting young ones, while they're at home, while they're in the nest, letting them make some of their own decisions. And some of you go, oh, goodness. Well, these don't have to be life-threatening decisions. For example, a teenage boy should be able to handle getting his hair cut. Should be able to go to the barber and tell him what to cut, and how long, how short. It really does something to avoid ego with mommy standing over. Okay, now nothing weird here. You don't cut your hair, cut your hair. Teenage girls should be able to handle going to the mall and buying an outfit. Not shock the rest of her life. She doesn't learn while you got some control over it. All right, now, young people, let me give you a word of advice on this. If parents hear this talk and take a deep breath and say, oh, we'll try it. See what happens. Here's what you do. If your parents hand you some money and they say, go ahead and get your hair cut. I go to the mall and buy an outfit. Here's what you do. Make sure you come back looking like you're ready to be on the service meeting. You know, get something conservative. Get something you can wear on the platform. Your folks will be so happy they may reach deep and say, hey, buy 2 of those. Come back looking like you're ready to be in an MTV music video. It's a real problem. Show them that you've got a brain. Communicate to them that you can handle making decisions. And you know what? They'll give you a little bit more freedom. They'll give you a little bit more freedom. Now, here's the problem. Our children are a different generation. They're a different generation. And this creates all kinds of conflict. How long or how short should hair be? Curfews. How loud should the stereo be played? What music should be played on the stereo? What clothing? What kind of jeans should I let my teenager wear? This could be World War III. And battle lines are drawn. There goes communication. Well, there is a Bible principle we want to talk about for a moment that can put a little bit of sanity into this. And it's one that's kind of unusual. It's Matthew 23:24. There Jesus told the Pharisees, who condemned the Pharisees, he said, you strain the gnat, but you gulp down the camel. So you know what that means? Everyone what that means, strain the gnat. What's that mean? Well, under the Mosaic law, if you touched a dead body, now we all know what a dead body is, right? If you touched a dead body, you were ritually or religiously unclean. That meant you couldn't participate in certain ceremonies. Okay? And there were reasons for that. Now, the Pharisees, who thought more like lawyers than anything, started figuring, well, what is a dead body? So they decided that a dead gnat, kind of a dead gnat was a dead body. Now, we all know that's crazy. It's ridiculous. So they worked it out that a dead gnat is a dead body. Now, if you're going to drink something, how do I know that a dead gnat hasn't fallen? So I better strain everything I drink. So they literally did this. Can you imagine? Strained out gnats to prove how holy and righteous they were, but yet when it came to love and compassion, they didn't have a clue what that was all about. So Jesus said, you're making issues over trivia. You're straining the gnat and you're gulping down camels. Well, we want to avoid straining the gnat. That would mean you might try cutting your children a little bit of slack and recognizing they are of a different generation. And things change, hairstyles change, music changes. You may put on your old albums, Gladys Knight and the Pips, the Beatles. Well, isn't that great? No, it's not. Well, you don't like that. See, now they put on their music, and what is that? You're like, wait a minute, my parents weren't all that crazy about Gladys Knight and the Pips. See, it's a different generation. So what we have to decide is it a conflict of taste? If it's just taste, we have to have a fight over this. Or is it a conflict of Bible principle? See, is it not that I don't like the music, it's that the music is inappropriate. The lyrics are bad. It's demonic. See, so if we can make that clear in our own minds, we don't want to strain the gnat. We don't want to have our children frustrated and say, Mom, I want to put on some music. Well, put those Kingdom Melodies on. Okay, I like Kingdom Melodies as much as the next person. Once in a while, you might want something a little peppier. No, you can't listen to any music. Well, the society never said you can't listen to music. They've just said to be selective. Or young people get frustrated when they want to watch a video. Well, what's that one about Bethel? Mom, I've seen it 100 times. I've seen it 101 times. Well, society's never told the parents that kids can't watch videos. We just said be selective. So we want to avoid straining the gnat. The wisdom from above is reasonable, says the Bible book of James. And that Greek word translated reasonable means fair, moderate, not insisting on the letter of the law. When we're rigid and unreasonable, we may win the battle because we're the parents, we've got the power, but we can lose the war. We can exasperate our children. They shut down. There goes communication. On the other hand, however, friends, never gulp down camels. Never violate Bible principles. Now, this can be difficult. Let me show you how easy it is to gulp down a camel. Little kid, 5 years old, comes to you, Mom, Dad, can I play with these kids in the neighborhood? You look at them, they're only 5 years old, my goodness. What could they possibly be into? Now, they're not Christians, and you go, well, what harm could there be? Go ahead, okay? You just swallowed your first camel. Because it's a little ticking time bomb that starts to tick. 8, 9, 10 years old. Mom, Dad, can I play with these kids? I go to school with them. They're nice kids, they're not into drugs or anything. I don't know. What's the harm? Go ahead. Tick, tick, tick. Age 15. Mom, Dad, want to go to this concert. Relax. It's not rap music or anything crazy. It's nice music. I don't know. Oh, well, I guess so. Tick, 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 tick. Because what are you going to do when your son or daughter comes home with a boy or girl on his or her arm and says, we're going out together? Oh, wait a minute, now you pull out the Bible. You whip out 1 Corinthians 15:33. Bad associations spoil useful habits. You know what happens? Kaboom! The bomb goes off right in your face, and the child takes that scripture and rams it down your throat. Since when are they bad associations? I've hung with these kids all my life. Why are they suddenly bad? So you've been communicating a double standard. Being blows up in your face. So don't strain the gnat, but don't gulp down camels either. When it comes to Bible principles, Bible laws, we draw our line in the sand. Now, friends, one of the biggest challenges of communication with our young people is when problems occur. And I don't want to be discouraging. The fact of the matter is, Doris and I have had the privilege of staying with dozens and dozens of families. We know hundreds and hundreds of families throughout the country. And it's rare to find a family that has not had some kind of serious problem with at least one of the children. I hate to say that. These are the times that we're living in. And so things happen. Kids get involved experimenting with drugs. Kids get involved experimenting with sex. It happens. Now, if it's your son or your daughter, how easy it is to take it as a personal affront. How could you do this to me? How could you hurt me like this? Don't you know I'll have to step down as an elder? How could you do this to me? You hear that word, me. There's a wounded, bleeding child here. Now, how do you communicate when there's such deep hurt emotions? Well, in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18, we take a look at hurt and angry parent. Isaiah 1:18. And we know the whole nation of Israel had hurt Jehovah. But try to get the spirit of what Jehovah said here. Get the sense of it. Notice the approach. He said in Isaiah 1:18, "Come now, you people, and let us set matters straight between us." Isn't that beautiful? No name calling, no insulting. We have a problem. Let's straighten the problem out. He says, though the sins of you people should prove to be as scarlet, they're going to be white just like snow. In other words, son or daughter, look, I know you're hurting right now. I know you think you've gone so far Jehovah can never forgive you, but that's not true. We can straighten this out. We'll work this thing out. And if I have to step down as an elder, that's fine. That's fine. That's okay. Because right now you need that attention, and I'm happy to give you that attention. This lets the child know that he or she can come back. But you say, Brother Waters, I don't know how realistic that is. I'd be so mad, I'd want to kill that kid. I don't know if I could be all calm like that. Well, maybe you couldn't. The issue is, what do you do with your anger? Turn to Genesis chapter 49. We'll look at another angry parent. And the issue is, where does he direct his anger? And this one's kind of subtle. If you don't read it carefully, it goes right over your head. So you got to read this carefully. Now, you remember Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi. You remember how they avenged their sister Dinah by killing all the men of Shechem without Jacob's permission? And years had passed, and he still was angry. Now, on his deathbed, Genesis 49, verse 7, Jacob says to his sons, Simeon and Levi, "Cursed be their anger, because it is cruel, and their fury, because it acts harshly." Now, here's a bad parent for you. He's hurt, angry, but do you see where he directed his anger? Do you catch it? Do you notice that he didn't curse his son? He cursed what they had done. He hated what they had done, but he didn't hate them. They still were his sons. He still loved them. Now that can make all the difference in the world. If the child understands that you're angry, you're very angry at what he did, but you still love him. He's redeemable. He can be helped. This helps him maintain some of his dignity and self-esteem, and helps him see that he can change. It's possible to change. Direct the anger at the wrong, not at the child. Friends, please don't wait for problems to develop to start trying to communicate. We recommend that you communicate every day, every week. We strongly recommend that you bring God into the picture by means of a regular, weekly family study. Now, this can do a lot to foster communication and find out what your kids are thinking, but I know some of you are saying, well, I tried that, and it doesn't work. Yes, some of you may have tried family study and given up, and I think we know why some of you may have given up. Because children are experts at sabotaging family studies. I know that I used to be pretty good at that myself. They know how to yawn, backboard, start fights with their siblings, and even have sudden attacks of stupidity. Okay, so Johnny, what's God's name? I don't know. Don't know. What's God's name? I don't know. You know, after a couple of weeks of this, you go, forget it. You know, I don't need this. Friends, let me put it to you this way. It is a battle of will. And for the life of your children, yours had better be the strong will. It's as simple as that. You know why I'm standing up here today? Somebody got a strong will. Simple as that. Keep that study going. Now, maybe what the problem is, we need to take a look at that family study. For example, are we still trying to make kids sit still for an hour? This is the MTV generation. You know, things change every 3 seconds. Many kids don't have that kind of attention span. Nobody said it has to be an hour. If you can hold their attention for 15 minutes or 10 minutes, 3 or 4 10-minute studies will do you a lot more good than an hour study that they're sleeping through. Also, make that family study enjoyable. Don't make it a weekly public execution where you discuss every single mistake the kid has made. You're not going to look forward to that. Always make it fun. It does not have to be on the watchtower. Use young people ask. Write a book of Bible stories with kids a little. Let them draw pictures. Whatever works. Keep it enjoyable. Be enthusiastic. It's a lot of work communicating with children, but perhaps you'll be able to say, as did John, no greater cause for thankfulness do I have than I should be hearing that my children are walking in the truth. And that means lots of communication. Just a word to you young people. Sometimes you hear something like this and you imagine that the problem my parents' fault. But you know, communication is a two-way street, and we know how to stop communication. We know how to close the door to our bedroom, turn up the Sony Walkman, stare into space with that glazed-eyed expression. Are you listening to me, huh? See, sometimes it's us, and what we need to do is face the fact that our parents are our very best friends. Now, kids don't always agree with it. Your parents are your best friends. And if you don't believe it, I'll have you run a little experiment. When you get home, call your best friend, whoever he or she is, and ask for $20. Right. Most of you wouldn't even waste the dime or a phone call to do something like that. You're not going to get it. You know what you do when you need money? You go to your best friend, your parents. Let me tell you a secret. You will be grown up, married, on your own, and you'd be surprised how many times you get to eat humble pie. Mom, Dad, I need a little help here. See, so they really are your best friends, and you can never pay your parents back for all they've done for you. But you know what you can do? Proverbs 23:22 says, "Listen to your father." Just listen to them. They talk, you listen. And if your parents are the quiet type, take a little initiative. Turn up the music once in a while. Get a conversation going. Ask your parents what they were like at your age. You may be surprised. Get their opinion on something. It doesn't have to be spiritual. You can talk about sports. It doesn't matter. Just talk. Get that relationship going. Who knows, one day when you really need them, you're used to communicating. Well, we've talked a lot about parents and children. Let's talk about marriage. A lot of interest in marriage. Many of us are married or would like to be married. And communication is the lifeblood of a healthy marriage. Proverbs 15:22 says, "There's a frustrating of plans when there's no confidential talk." Now, not surprisingly, one professional marriage counselor says, listen up, brothers, the most familiar complaint I hear from wives is, guess what? He won't talk to me. He doesn't listen to me. Oddly enough, men are not going to marriage counselors and he just doesn't talk. I don't understand it. It seems to be a pretty one-sided thing. And if you're having problems now, be aware of the fact that these problems tend to be exacerbated when the children leave home. And a lot of marriages find that when kids are home, there's a zillion things to talk about. Prices after prices. And when children leave home, it's like they lose their identity as parents. And what do we talk about? And that's why the middle-aged